Hello, it's James from XRobots.co.uk. This is part 18 of Ultron, the Real Robot. This is a real robot, it's not a costume, there's no one inside. In fact, it's going to be partially driven by a motion capture suit, sensors from its environment, so it's quite a social robot, and also by its own AI, so check out part 1 for the full description of what the project's about. Last time I got the head on, and prior to that I got some of these joints actually moving from the inertial measurement units that are going to make up the motion capture suit. So if you remember, there's quite a range of motion in the head, and I also had the shoulders working, so check back on that video to see it operating. Last time I got the head on, it's on quite a long neck, and I tried to get those proportions right, and I think they're right for Ultron, but there is quite a lot missing here. He's got quite big shoulders, some conduit, obviously the breastbone there, and other bits and pieces. So this episode I'm going to really concentrate on those cosmetics, although they need to be functional so all the joints can work, and then next time I'm going to work my way down and start building proper mechanics for the forearms. First of all, I'm going to make these green shoulder parts that we've got here, and hopefully that'll immediately give it some better proportions. There's quite a lot to go in the front, the clavicle that goes on these parts, and also the neck conduits there, and I think once I've filled those in, that'll set it off quite a lot, and of course the breastbone. So I've extracted those parts off to a separate project. I've put a bit of surface detail in them, but not too much. They are in fact partially covered by much bigger shoulder bells that sit on the arms as well, so they just need some detail to set them off. And I'm pretty sure I can print those in one piece each on 2 of the Lolzbot Tazzies. Here they are. So these fit on here. They need to go slightly higher and point in at the neck. So obviously this brings up the height of this much further. So already the neck doesn't look quite so long. And as I say, there's lots of stuff in front to fill in the big gap as well. So we need to mount these on some brackets. There's a bit of a challenge with these because these shoulders pivot around this way. And they also kind of go in, so if I attach it to the tops here, these are going to collide, because when the shoulder's right up, this thing touches the neck. So we need some means of keeping this here, but allowing it to come up, allowing this to slide up underneath it, and it also to pivot round whilst it's doing that. So I think what I'm going to do is build a bracket, rather than picking it up this way, it's going to hinge it up from the back, so it hinges it up this way, possibly even on a 4-bar link that always keeps it parallel, but still allows it to pivot round at this point, somewhere near the pivot point for the shoulder, so that it can come round and go up and down without going up at a funny angle. I've made one bracket here which is L-shaped, and that's going to pivot off this back thing here. So that'll attach to a bracket so it can go up and down, and then obviously the pivot point in the end is where the shoulder bell part will hinge off there, so that will then be able to rotate around. So I need to make a block to hinge this part on the back here at the right spacing, and then I think that's going to be okay. I've already tried it on the other side where I've put the shoulder right up, so I can check that this can actually lift up and clear all of the mechanism. So here's the assembly. We've got obviously the hinges that go that way, and I've put these little hinges on here. These stick to the bottom of the shoulder bell parts. So I've got these little bits of studding with a slot cut in the top that I've just screwed in. They're tight in the red part and slack in the grey part, so those should rotate okay. They're a little bit stiff, but they've got the leverage of that whole shoulder panel on. So let's get this stuck on and mounted up, and we can move the robot around a bit and see how well it moves. I fitted these on here for now with the brackets. They look alright now. It makes the head look less high. These will sit slightly higher as well. So already the neck doesn't look so long. Obviously all the front of this is about to get filled in this episode as well. So obviously these can lift up as the shoulder raises, and they can also swivel round to track the shoulders. So if we just give these one of these a shove. Now the pivot point isn't in quite the same place, but obviously the range of motion is fine, and there are big shoulder bells that come over here as well, so that's actually going to overlap this piece, and that will be fixed on that assembly there. So what I do need though is underneath here kind of a springy piece and a channel attached to the top of this. So I've got kind of a springy stick that sits in the channel, so this will always track the shoulder there and keep that in line, and also as this raises up it won't get caught on any of the pieces underneath. But I really like to do that when it's in motion. I may come back and do that in this episode, or it may be in a couple of episodes when I've actually got some scripts that run all the motors, so I can really see how this performs. I still have the option to change the shape and size of this angled L-shaped bracket. I could have it so the shoulders slope down more. We'll really have to see how that works when it's in motion. For now, I'm really happy to get the cosmetic parts on and build up these shoulders. And the next thing we're going to look at is the breastbone, which is of course called the sternum. So let's have a look at that sternum. We have to make a piece that fits in between the original chest plates, and I've got the model here, in fact, is the low resolution version without the details on, because 123D design handles much better if there's less faces. So I've basically put this block in here, which I've sized, and it's just got square edges. It overlaps the other parts. What I'm going to do is use the project tool to project onto this surface with these contours, and then use those sketches to cut that line, and we can get something that's completely uniform with the front of the chest. Similarly, we can subtract these other parts and we can get that cutout piece. There it is, and I've done a bit of contouring to the bottom just to make sure that comes down to the right distance. Probably do something about this surface, but we can sort that out shortly. I've made that slightly wider and stretched out the bottom to meet these parts. Now the parts either side I haven't printed yet either, and I'm not going to do that till the robot's moving, because they may well interfere with the bottom, so I need to decide if those are on hinges or they're flexible or something else. I've put some details in here, and I did that by snapping a cube to this and using that surface to draw on. I need to do some more details, so here's the cube I've just got from the primitives menu, and I've just snapped that to the surface. Then I've used that to draw the sketches on, so you can only draw a sketch on a flat surface. So I've used that cube, you can see the sketch is slightly further away, and then I've used the split face tool to project those sketches onto the curved surface underneath, and I did this quite a lot with the other previous parts. A bit more detailing and contouring though. I've cut another hole out there and put some contours up here. I've stretched the top out here as well, and that needs to be contoured in multiple directions, and we can do that just by sort of grabbing the corners here and chamfering those out. A few more chamfers on the corner. I've dealt with that top piece, put a couple of holes in for features. Seems to be looking okay. There's some extra bits that go on that kind of cut down, and some other bits and pieces as far as I can see from the reference pictures. Started to position these parts, so these are at the moment independent pieces, but obviously what I'll do is subtract this part from it using the subtract tool, so I can just do this and I can cut that off so it's perfectly flush with that other part. Those are all merged together now, and I've gone and flattened the tops off, and I did that just by sort of pulling this surface in and out. So that's pretty easy to do to get the top there. Same with the one here. So those are all merged in, it's all one solid object now. And there's a few more features, and I think we'll get that printed and see how it fits before we do any more. So I've added these round things on, which are just going to be stuck on the existing chest plates. A bit more contouring up the top, a few more flat faces, and I've cut this whole thing in half, ready for printing in 2 halves. Here are the parts ready for printing. I've had to cut these lengthways, and obviously stick them back to back there, so that will get printed and they'll be stuck back to back, and that's so it fits on the print bed. Here are the parts. I've already solvent welded with acetone these parts back together, all 4 of them. So that should be our whole sternum and those bits and pieces that sit up on the top on each side. I seem to have one slight problem, which is that this doesn't fit at all. In fact, this is supposed to be below here, which is fine, but then the top doesn't fit anymore, and this doesn't fit onto here. It wants to fit up here, and you remember I made these pieces removable, so this should sit at this height. So in fact, I think what I need to do is move these chest plates up so it fits like that. Basically, I made these removable, fortunately, and it looks like they are too low compared to the CAD by about 20 mil. So I need to shift those right up, and that's another reason why the neck might look too long. So I need to cut the brackets off the back, and then print some new ones and move them down and shift those chest plates up a bit. I just hacksawed off the old tabs that were on there, and I've printed some new ones, which I now need to place further down so these can sit higher. I've stuck the new brackets on, so these should fit on pretty well. They should hook on and they also screw on, so let's just place those. There's one, and there's the other one. So I've just taped this thing on with double-sided tape for now, but I think that looks pretty good. It seems to be in the right place now at least. Just need to secure these with some screws to hold them in exactly the right place, and that should be fine. Right, I think that looks okay. Can shift this around, but on the whole that seems to fit as intended. I've designed these sections for the conduit, and they've got holes through the outside to put a bit of bungee cord through so they can be flexible. Obviously these will be stacked up. And I've also got a big hole in the middle with a gap in the back so I can easily feed wires in that go up to the head. So these can be the actual functional conduits to bring all the wiring into that head assembly. So these are going to be stacked up. We'll see, print a few out and see how it goes. I'm not sure how well they're going to bend around. We might need some spaces between them, but we'll see what happens. The rest of these printed overnight. It took about 8 hours to do all of them. We've got 8, which is 4 for each side of the neck. So obviously the plan is the wires run up the middle, and we put some bungee cord each side so they can hang and stretch as the neck moves. Obviously these want to lock solid rather than pivoting really well, so it's going to be hard to drape them. So I've made these little spacers, which I'm just going to put on. Something like that, so now they pivot around. Let's pull that a bit tighter. We can put more in as we wish. So I'm going to try these on for size. I've got some little hooks made to hook the top of the bungee cord to the side of the neck there, and then we need something to attach the bottom. So I've got 4 here. Obviously the groove is in the back, and this is quite bendy now. It also twists. So you'll notice in pictures of Ultron, in fact, these get thicker at the bottom, but all I'm going to do to cheat is actually twist these so they're thinner at the top, looking from the side, and fatter at the bottom, looking from the front, and that's going to twist round and go roughly there, I think, somewhere. So I need to stick that hook on and then make a bracket at the bottom end to hold that in place and try and stylize that as much as possible. Obviously these are flexible, so as this neck moves around, hopefully they should move around and they won't get in the way too much, or if they do, they should just sort of pop out of the way. I've installed the little hooks there, so now this should hook on there quite nicely. I want to try and keep that turned, so I might put another one on to hold it that way, but I think it looks okay. So we should end up with something like this, kind of holding those, and hopefully if the shoulder bell hits it or something, it just kind of pops out of the way. And obviously these are stretchy, so as the neck moves around, it should move around with them. We need something else in front, but I think I'll leave that until it's moving around. The one thing that concerns me right now is the clavicle, which has got to fit on here and have rods that go this way, and they're sort of supposed to go behind there, but I think they might be something to do with how the bottom of this attaches. Perhaps they can be attached to that, so as this folds up these get pushed in or something like that, but I really need to think through how that works, which is basically the missing part that goes across here from both sides. It probably wasn't clear where I was waving my hands then, but what we need is a thing that goes from this hole and comes across basically to this yellow thing in the middle, so that's going to be the clavicle or the collarbone. It's really for show, although Ultron does have one. It has no function really, and it's also a bit annoying because as these pieces fold in, obviously it needs to shrink and it needs to bend all around, so that's going to be quite challenging. So what I've done is made this part, which is going to be printed in NinjaFlex, and you'll notice it has kind of a central hub that screws onto the main bracket here, which is in red. And it's going to be flexible, of course, so that can flex all around, and it can also rotate a little bit as those fold in and out. I haven't decided what attaches to it, but we'll get those printed, then I'll have a play around with it. So here are the parts. You may have noticed the printer was going pretty slow, and it does that for NinjaFlex, around 14 millimeters a second instead of 100. So these took 6 hours, and that's why there's no more footage, because I left them going overnight. The prints have come out pretty well. They're printed like this together, so there are some wispy hairs where the nozzle has gone between them, but the other side's absolutely fine. And this is down facing anyway, we could clean that up. I used support material, and I've torn out the support material of one of them for the stick where the actual clavicle goes. And NinjaFlex is really tough, so I tend to use pliers to pull out all the support material if I use it on NinjaFlex. There we go. So just need to clean that up, and let's offer them up to the robot and see what they look like. I've taken one side of the chest plate off now so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the pass. Of course the middle of this is flexible because it's NinjaFlex. So that's going to screw straight onto the hole there. So this thing can rotate around, and also it can bend in all directions. And then we need to decide what comes across here. But as I say, this whole thing lifts up, so we need to be quite careful. And we also need to make sure that it works with this. So I think that, as I say, it might be a kind of combination piece that holds the bottom of this and is attached to this. I've just moved one shoulder up here so we can see that now this is a bit hectic. So what I was going to do was get the conduit piece there and attach it to the other end of this clavicle on a little thing so it all moves together. But actually it's all going to have to kind of squish, and the clavicle is going to have to go behind here, which is where it should be anyway. So I think what's going to happen is I'm not going to make anything too clever. Cosmetics are for cosmetics and not for practical reasons. So I'm going to put a stubby little stick in there with a scoop that can scoop behind this as this pushes in. And these conduits are going to be attached to the inside of the chest plate, or the top of it here. There's another feature that should be there. And that's going to be about it really, and hopefully as the arm moves these things will just squish around on the head turns and everything should be fine. Here are my little clavicle sticks. They're only 50mm sticking out of that rubber piece, and the top is a scoop shape, as I say, to fit behind the neck conduits. I've also started to work out about the sliders for the shoulder bells. So I'm going to stick these things on top of that shoulder mechanism. So the shoulder bell will have a stick underneath, which looks like this exciting item, which will slide between those two lumps. Now to print this without support material, I've actually cut them in half and made opposite ones. And you'll notice that those are aligned slightly, not completely straight with it, because of course the whole thing moves forward, so that's going to be biased towards the forward angle. They're also sloped slightly outwards because of course this lifts upwards, at which point they'd be pointing in a lot. So I've given that a bit of thought, and then obviously I'll print them in two halves without support material and stick them back together. So hopefully that should enable the shoulder slabs there to slide neatly over that mechanism. Then we can test the whole thing together. I've plugged those bits of clavicle in. It's a shame they don't go all the way, but obviously when this hinges up it does. So we've also got these sliders under here now, so I've put these in and I've put the lumps on top of here, so that locates in there okay. There's a bit of wobble in all of these. I may bungee them down. I may bungee these to the middle so they're constantly stretched and it holds them tight, and I may bungee these down so they're kind of held and they don't wobble around. But essentially this now moves with the shoulder, so if I give that a turn there, we can see this tracks around and that thing stays between the lumps. So that seems to work pretty well. Let's just try and put that back. There we go, and back again. So now I want to go and get these and attach them to the front of the chest plate so they come just in front of the chamfer that I put on. And then we should be all styled up, and we'll see how well this shoulder moves as well. I'm hoping these rubbery things and springy things will all just play nicely together. Hopefully with the clavicle pushing behind this as it closes up. I've just put more hooks on the back of these things and bungeed the other end of those to them. So there's a bit of wobble, but they're not too bad. So now we can try putting the arms up and down, and hopefully these track properly and they go behind there and everything works. Although I do think I need to bungee these probably together or to the middle part to make them track properly. Well, almost. Definitely need that bungee to help that track and to help it guide behind there. But on the whole, that seems all right to me. In fact, that's further than I intended it to go. Let's put it down again, making sure that stays in its runner. And that's pretty much the end there. Yeah, so definitely having that bungeed so it goes under there more cleanly is a good idea, and to stop this wobbling. But pretty happy with that, I think. I think as well if I turn this, everything's fine. This doesn't come anywhere near, and that tracks properly. So Yep, that seems to be it really. I'm going to make further adjustments to it when it's in motion and I've got the electronics, but for now I'm pretty happy with the kind of cosmetic and functional dressing. I'm much happier with the proportions of where the head sits and the rest of the body now, and of course we've still got quite big shoulder bells to go over here, which of course will slide with these underneath them, so those are still to come. Obviously the shoulders look a bit small now, but we're really building this out. There's still some more to build out lower down the torso. So next time I'm going to go back and do some proper mechanical design and do the forearms, which I think I'm going to try and use a clutch to use one main motor to do the elbow, the twisting, and to open the hands. So that's going to be probably a couple of episodes. And after that we can at least get some scripted movement and some things wired in. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more updates on this project and other projects. And also support me on Patreon. If you'd like to have a look at patreon.com/XRobots. You can get access to some exclusive rewards, including all my videos early for patrons only, and also a regular live broadcast with me, which you can interact with me with chat. So check that out. Alright, that's all for now.